Hey everyone, it's Bob. Welcome to the show. For today's episode of Elevate Your AIQ, I am beyond excited to welcome Ross Dawson. Ross is a world-renowned futurist, keynote speaker, and author whose work has shaped how I think about the future of work, collective intelligence, and human potential for nearly 2 decades. This year, I had the privilege to collaborate with Ross through his Humans plus AI community, where he's leading thought-provoking conversations and building powerful resources to help individuals and organizations harness the full promise of human and AI collaboration. Today's discussion is a deep dive into Ross's perspective, as well as his frameworks for AI-augmented thinking, systems-level change, and designing human-centered futures. I strongly encourage you to listen to this entire episode, which will shift your perspective on what it truly means to be ready for the future of work. Be sure to check out all of Ross's amazing work at humansplus.ai. Thank you so much for tuning in, and happy holidays. Let's go talk to Ross. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Elevate Your AIQ. I am your host, Bob Pulver, and with me today, I have the pleasure of speaking to Mr. Ross Dawson. How are you today, Ross?
Wonderful, thank you.
I'm really, really glad that we were able to find some time to record one of our always enlightening conversations. So thank you so much for being here. Just to kick things off, for those in the audience that aren't familiar with some of your work, if you could just give just a little bit about your background and some of the fascinating projects that you're working on.
Well, the background's a long story since it's been so lots of countries, lots of industries, lots of all over the place. But I guess the short story is today, the shortest description is a futurist and entrepreneur. The futurist part is mainly keynotes, boards, and executive sessions on how do we think effectively about the future. And a lot of that, of course, has been impacting technology over the years. And I suppose the real macro theme is future of work and future of organizations. So this is alongside sort of the working with clients. I have a set of ventures, so long being an entrepreneur, and everything at the moment is focused around humans plus AI. And this is, it's not new in terms of I've, been looking at the role of AI and in work and society and so on for, over 2 decades, actually, in some various guises. But, almost immediately after ChatGPT came out, what I call the ChatGPT moment, when, yes, we had generative AI before then, but that was the moment when we all woke up and realized how far it's come. So almost immediately I framed this as humans plus AI, and that's what I've been working on ever since. And 3 number of core ventures. One is the humans plus AI explorers community. A lot of extraordinary people, including you, Bob, are involved to explore the edge of how humans and AI can work well together, building software. So currently redeveloping my ThoughtWeaver AI-augmented thinking workflow software to help people think better with AI. I have a number of courses, so a couple on LinkedIn Learning on building an AI roadmap and AI business model innovation, and now building another course on humans plus AI teaming. And a few other things, but that's most of it.
I'm so thrilled that you're here. I've been following your work for probably those couple of decades back from my days at IBM, when I was doing a lot of sort of extracurricular work around crowdsourcing and collective intelligence and collaborative decision making. So I guess there might have been some machine learning available and baked in there, I suppose, but really it was just from a practical sense. How do we sort of capitalize on human potential and insight, and how do we aggregate that in effective ways? And I just was always intrigued by the way you framed some of these things, and it really helps people think more certainly beyond their daily life, their daily work. And I think that's really important. And you continue to sort of enlighten folks now in this age of AI, where everyone has been exposed and is interacting directly with it, as opposed to it being confined to technical disciplines and engineering work and software development work. So, and yeah, the community is great. It seems to be growing quite a bit, and you've got workstream leaders, handling different aspects of it, right? You've got our friend Ron Shaw is doing responsible AI, and then you've got someone doing AI in education, and maybe you could just elaborate on some of the other focus areas.
So there's a free part of the community and a few things we do around open forum and future of work, actually. And then there's quite a few different specific topics we dive into. Each of those has as leader for them. And, you know, one of the ones most active is our whole systems AI. So people are thinking around the systems level, what does this mean for humanity, planet, and beyond in the roles of AI and humans in that space? So this humans plus AI system, I think it's really some really deep conversation there. A lot of the rest of it's a lot more immediate. So things like obviously AI in the enterprise. My personal focus is significantly on AI in enhanced thinking and AI in strategy. So do a lot of work around that. And we also have many other, aspects. So digging into, for example, AI in learning and education. That's obviously a topic of great moving fast and very important, as well as, areas such as, AI in professional services. So more specific, but one where, again, there's massive shifts. So each of these are sort of building resources, having the conversations out of which we can, think together at the edge of what's happening and look to create it. But I suppose the underlying premise is the mission, around humans plus AI. It is this belief that AI can complement humans, that humans are wonderful, that AI should not be designed as or used as a substitute for humans, but to be able to always be a complement to augment us in not just our work capabilities, but also who we can be, part of this evolutionary process. And that, we are already in a humans plus AI world where we have humans plus AI, and we need to work around how it is we can create organizations, societies, individuals, teams, wherever, where these come together in ways that can be better than either individually.
When you think back to some of the, I guess you've always had these sort of, bold, methodologies and thoughts about work and people's capabilities and things like that. I guess I wonder, are people more curious? Are they digging in more now with AI than they did before? Do they recognize how these business models around education, around how the enterprise works and how organizations work, are they more attuned to it now that it's maybe affecting them more or about to?
Yeah, well, we live in a world where AI is pervasive. It's like I experience when on the bus, if I go to the cafe, if I'm walking on the beach, I hear conversation, people talking about AI. And so it's all around us. Everyone is, sees the impact and wonders about it. And the point is they're fundamentally around attitude, where it's quite justified to be taken aback, afraid, scared, uncertain. And, I think it's also quite a natural response to be excited. And there's many very interesting surveys where they look around the world and they say, how excited are you and how nervous are you? Or variations on that. And, you can be both excited and nervous, and I am. And you can be sort of more nervous than excited. You can be more excited than nervous. And, those are both valid responses. So I think everybody has some kind of, engagement. And I always think around what is most useful. And sometimes it's useful to be cautious, because then we start to do things which stop bad things happening, for example, or we start to say, well, how is it we can work around these challenges? It's also useful to be excited because it helps you to create things in better ways. But there are some responses to AI which I think which are not useful, in that they are categorically, excluding it or being able to frame it as something which is inherently bad. And yes, AI can be, as many other things, can be massively misused and abused, and is being and will be. But that doesn't mean that we can't be used for positive aspects as well. So that our mindset in how it is we think about AI really frames how much value we can get from it individually and at a societal level, same way.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of these discussions across some of these disciplines as well. Certainly have colleagues and still in large enterprise, which I left behind a few years ago. But in the startup world, and I'm on my school district's AI task force, trying to make sure the parents and educators are understanding what's happening. This isn't just for students, and in terms of their ability to actually learn what they're supposed to learn. I mean, teachers need to understand how to maybe change how they teach and what they teach. Administrators need to understand that. But it is hard when you go to the sort of systems level that you were alluding to before, because so much needs to change, right? It doesn't. We can go in and say in high school or even grammar school that we're going to start teaching these the way we used to teach how to use a computer, but we've got to have all these other mechanisms in place to say this is appropriate use, this isn't. And oh, by the way, colleges are still looking for, good standardized test scores and good grades or whatever. There's there's a lot of there's a lot of components to making the whole system, sort of be overhauled in a way.
Yeah, yeah, and that's that's why this kind of thinking is
Yeah.
important, is to be able
Yeah.
to get people to start thinking at that level. And so it's always, in the long I believe fundamentally, future, the role of the futurist or the futures thinking foresight is ultimately systems thinking. It's around, I believe strongly it's not around prediction. It is around helping us get a view of the system, which means we understand the levers which are most likely to move us towards the outcomes we want. So in terms of thinking about the future, it's saying my understanding of how the future could unfold informs the decisions and the actions I take today. Because there are some possible futures you might like more than some others. And so, but that is only based on this understanding of the system. What is it? What are the levers of change? What are the things which will shape that future? So that kind of thinking is extraordinarily important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, one of the things I I love about the explorers community, not just because, I just think it's such important, work that you're doing. It's also because, I've been spending a lot of time helping people, well, even with the show, just think about their own sort of literacy and readiness. And part of that is sort of, there's a sort of responsibility angle in terms of, do no harm or use AI where you should, not just anywhere you can. And there's an element of fairness, of course. I spend a lot of time in the talent space, and we want to make sure we're making fair decisions and we can trust these systems and trust each other. But I also, I guess, just thematically around humans plus AI. I mean, this is what I'm trying to get people to appreciate, that we can be enthralled and we can be much more excited than nervous about what AI can do, but we still need to think about it in the through this sort of human-centric lens that says, if we want to, continue to thrive, and if we want to find meaning in the work that we do, and enhance what we're capable of doing, then I think what choice do we have than to look at it through that lens? I mean, even technologists like you and I, who are just fascinated by what technology is capable of, still recognize that we don't want to just relinquish our agency and control to the technology.
Yeah, well, there's people who are intent on, saying that this is an inevitable future that AI takes over and we're going to build it. And it's I think unfortunate, but that's happening. That's fine. I think those who believe in humanity and a human-centric future need to take action in order to make that happen. Because I think, in a way, commercial forces, amongst other things, aren't necessarily implicitly human-centric. So we do need to, have that intent, and enact that intent to maximize the chances that our future is truly, human-centered and helps human flourishing.
Absolutely. So when you think about, some of the work that you've done, earlier in your career, things around collective intelligence, and then you think about AI and how AI is augmenting humans, either an individual human or a team, an organization. How do you see some of the how do you see AI sort of playing that role? I guess one example is there's some new capabilities around where you can have groups apparently within like a not I don't think it's Chat GPT, but there's some AI assistant, LLM based assistant that you can now go into as a group, and then you can have the AI support the group, which is one of the use cases that I was wondering when we were going to start to see something like that. I mean, what are your thoughts on that in the context of, is that the optimal model? I guess there's a lot of models, but I'm just thinking about like how a group can come together, but then have AI be sort of another participant in some sort of decision-making body or a board or something like that. How do you think about
Well, that's actually really the center of my work right now.
Yeah. Okay.
For two things. So I mentioned before, I'm creating a course on humans plus AI teaming, as in how do you build, lead, design, and participate in teams that have both humans and AI. And also the ThoughtWeaver software, which we're rebuilding in the moment, that was and still, phase one is still an individual tool. The next one is a team tool where you have a number of people who are participating as well as a number of AI agents within it. So so early in building out the all of the underlying frameworks and the structures behind it. But there's a few things to point to. One is,
if you're looking to explore fresh perspectives, dive into compensation tech, or just enjoy a lively conversation and debates about the evolving world of total rewards, you're in the right place. Welcome to Totally Rewarding Chats, where we discuss the future of compensation, benefits, talent, and all things HR tech. I'm Sean Luchins, VP of Product Strategy at Salary.com, bringing years of product and development perspective. Joining me is the bow tie wearing, comp tech loving, experienced guru Paul Ryman, founder and managing partner of Novo Insights. Together, we'll be jamming with guests and sharing candid, unfiltered conversations about total reward strategy, compensation technology, talent trends, and anything else we find interesting in the world of HR.
It's roles. So you're getting clarity on what are human roles and what are AI roles. And this goes back to, a lot of the work which I've been doing over the last years around defining the complementary roles of humans plus AI in workflows, from being able to have particularly human roles around framing, judgment, curation, synthesis, as well as complementing various AI roles. So more within a specific team, teams have objectives, and we can frame, well, what are relative AI and human roles. One of the key principles is around, essentially what enables that is trust. So there is such a thing as an appropriate degree of trust in AI, where if you don't trust it enough, then amongst other things, you are maybe not using its outputs, or you're spending too much time checking that. But there's certainly such a thing as over trusting the AI and just taking what it gives you as a given. So there's that calibration. And in all of these things, there are two primary facets to it. One is the way we design and the AI systems and the interfaces, which can include, for example, aspects of explainability to the degree in which they have any validity, confidence scores in AI outputs, and the skills where people can actually start to understand the concept of appropriate degrees of trust, and to then try to work out what is an appropriate degree of trust within that system. Another thing which could go beyond the team environment, but I think is also really critical, is what I call levels of delegation of decision making to AI. Where on one level you can say, okay, I'm going to delegate this decision completely to AI. And at the highest level, you can say, well, no, it's a human-only decision. No human, no AI is involved. And then along the way, you have both AI-first decisions where you have a whole variety of different mechanisms for humans to be involved, with obviously oversight of the model to deal with exceptions which are flagged by the machine, approval, and and a number of varieties of what is described as humans in the loop. And then you have a number of other human-first decisions where different aspects of where AI can be involved include recommendation with analysis and pros and cons, red teaming decisions, and so on. So we need to understand in any organization, say what are the decisions and what are the decision rights. And that includes for any decision, what is the architecture of how humans and AI involved. So it's quite a bit of work, but this is what underlies the performance of not just humans plus AI teams, but also teams generally. And what I often observe is that when you start to bring AI into individual work, into organizational work, into strategic decision-making, which is a lot of what I do, or anything aspect of that, one of the most valuable aspects is it forces you to understand, well, what are we actually doing? What is the process for decision-making we are using? What is the structure we are doing? And that is a challenge itself. But that means that not only you can incorporate AI appropriately, but you are also improving the way in which you're functioning in any case. And just one final comment on just the humans plus AI teams is there is a growing body of literature which shows that AI can be essentially a good moderator in collective intelligence in order to be able to nudge behaviors, to amongst other things, to encourage the appropriate participation across groups in conversations or decision makings, to be able to challenge ideas or support others, or to present what different people are saying in a way that can lead to resolution. So those are just a few aspects of how it is which can support effective designs of humans plus AI teams. Well, humans are still central, but AI plays an extraordinarily valuable role in creating very high performance.
How do you think about, like, within an organization, an AI that's essentially a digital twin, like a digital version of an actual real person, versus a sort of synthetic agent that's been created that just has like the domain expertise that perhaps complements the rest of the team, right? Like there's a distinction. I think from a human-centric perspective, there's an important distinction there, but is one versus another, where I guess are those two completely different scenarios, where one is a proxy for a person versus just another sort of contrarian perspective as part of the debate?
So they can be used in quite similar ways, but the ways which they are built is very different. And so that impacts their application. So if you take a generic agent, all right, we're designed to be a expert in, flow analysis and for a water utility or something. So it is taking the full body of literature, possibly specific research and documents and so on, and be able to embody those. So a digital twin is basically taking as much as possible of what you can, glean from a person to be able to mimic them. And so that includes anything that they have, written, anything they've said, anything they've created, and in particular, any decisions they've made. And this actually does go back, and there's many ways of eliciting these digital twins. Sometimes simply, okay, just show me everything you've ever written or said, upload it, and do something with it. But it also goes back to expert systems where these are essentially based on interviews, essentially saying, well, what would you do in this particular situation? Or why did you do that in that particular situation, to be able to elicit some part of that thinking? So that becomes a decision mode, but, essentially modeling of how that person would think in a particular context. And of course, the other aspect is personality. And personality is not just the agreeable to neurotic spectrum,
Right.
but it's also the ways in which you interact. And so, these can be, again, there's not as, some things are generally better than others, but they're different. And that goes back to diversity. And that goes back to the value of diversity in organizations, in society, in teams. And so if you have a bunch of generic AI agents, yes, you may be bringing different expertise domains to bear, but you're not necessarily bringing the richness of, the individuality of perspectives as well as communication styles that can, sometimes create friction. But we have, in my first book I wrote about, I included some reference to creative abrasion, some research which was done way back, where sometimes the abrasion is creative. Everyone agreed all the time is not necessarily the best way to get to the outcomes. And so these are some facets of, how the digital twins are different from simply your AI agent.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of that gets to not just people's specific experiences, because if it is documented, then that could be absorbed right into an advanced agent. But how you felt as a human being in those moments, and that elicits specific observations, and I think in part ties to the value of the cognitive diversity that I think you're alluding to, that makes some of these decision-making bodies, if put together correctly and optimally, that's part of that's part of that value, is having that brought to bear on a particular decision, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this does go back to, the oft-quoted phrase of Mikhail Polanyi, which is, you know more than you can tell. And this is still, I think, people forgetting this today, in the fact that, yes, a large language model encompasses, most of the language we have ever, said, written, or otherwise. But the fact is, everybody knows more than they can possibly say. However, whether you're an expert or whatever you can say so much about it, but you know more than you can say. And I think that's again sort of a really central part of my work at the moment, in being able to dig deeper into implicit mental models of humans, how it is we can help people to clarify their own mental models, what underlies their own thinking. Now, again, there'll always be a gap between what you know and what you can tell, but being able to make it so that we can have the AI which encompasses everything that we can tell or say, with that deeper knowledge which comes from experience. And that's a lot of the heart of where, the value from humans plus AI comes.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this in terms of the folks who are nervous about their own, professional development, their own career, the job they have at the moment, and whether that's in jeopardy. And organizations, based on their own objectives and culture and leadership, are going to make some decisions that aren't necessarily, logical or optimal. But I also feel like people need to understand a lot of the concepts that we're talking about, not some of the more esoteric things, but really just sort of latch on to some of the things that they can absorb themselves, and really are more actionable for them to say, look, I don't have to, I'm not like a victim here, right? And there are things that I can do, and there's things that I'm capable of that, to your point, I may not be able to express. I mean, just look at a resume. A resume is just a tiny little sliver of what most people are capable of, but they have to be able to show, I don't know, I guess it's part of this almost a self-discovery, process, to say, what are my true, like, transferable, skills? I bet there's a bunch of things that I could be doing, and I don't have to just I don't have to let my current circumstances give me this sort of fatalist kind of attitude about what's next for me.
Yeah, well, to me, this goes to there's a far bigger thing which is evoked for me here, which is around the jobs. And, for a very, very, very long time, I've said, you know, jobs are boxes, and we shouldn't be designing a job description, which is this is a set of characteristics, and we're looking for a person who we can fit in that box, and then that person's in that box until we put them in another box.
Right.
Because people can do more than whatever it is the box which the job is supposed to be is. And so this has always been relevant. And actually, there was this wonderful little great essay recently called Inside Cursor, where somebody was worked for 2 months inside the AI startup Cursor, and it described at length their hiring process. And basically, they never hire for a job. They only say, "This is a person that we want," and then we'll work out how they can be valuable afterwards, which is, I think, a far more appropriate way of thinking about things. But this is becoming far more pointed today when AI can do tasks. Only very rarely can AI do jobs, but there's lots of tasks that AI can do well. So when we take what was a job, which is, I think it's more than a set of tasks, but let's say, there's a bunch of tasks and AI starts to take it. So what does that person do then? Do they do more of the tasks which they can do the AI can't? Do they, redesign whatever? It takes away from that, again, that box. So where we must sort of leap to immediately is to say, okay, we have a person and they're currently doing this work, but they could be useful in so many other ways. And there's different aspects of the organization. Again, that was my always view of the network view of the organization, was always, how do you have the connections that mean the talent, the experience, the relationships, the capabilities of a person can be applied on the fly to any challenge or opportunity in the organization, wherever it is. That's what a good networked organization is. Those networks are in place. So now we have a place where we can have an organization where where they have fluid talent, as I've talked about for a long time, but now it is fluid talent brought to the fore by and enabled by AI, where we're not only applying people to wherever it is and however it is they can create value with the full extent of their richness of their capabilities, but ideally, we're actually exploring their latent capabilities, the things which they don't necessarily know they're good at, but they could be good at if you gave them a chance. And we can actually design organizations that don't just use the fuller breadth of what a person brings to work, but actually uncovers and expands their capability set and their ability to contribute.
I'm bullish on organizations evolving to that level of, adaptability and dynamics. I feel like I've been waiting quite a while because, you were writing about that. I forget how long ago that book came out, but
Living Networks.
Yeah. Living
2002.
Networks.
Yeah.
2002. Right. So 2002, I mean, I was at IBM at the time, and to their credit, I mean, they were experimenting with this in a bunch of different places. There was a team in services called Liquid. I think the project was just called Liquid, right? And it was, can we move these people around? I worked on a project that was trying to say, can we crowdsource? It was like before there was a gig marketplace, and we were building little prototypes of what that might mean. Can we crowdsource people from different parts of the organization, technical, non-technical, services, product, customer service, whatever? Can we bring these people to bear and create a solution that could be used in different parts of the organization? And so we built a prediction market as well. And so there was a lot of things that people were experimenting with, but even the rise, probably 5-6 years ago when people started building talent marketplaces, I was like, oh, okay, maybe this is, if this gets momentum, people will see, oh, look, we can actually start to have these internal gig, employees, and they can go and work on different projects or whatever. But, even that mechanism to orchestrate work has met with mixed results. And some of that is cultural, right? Some of it was, managers hoarding talent. They didn't want to give these people up. They didn't want to have them do stretch assignments, let alone, being able to just look internally for other work and compete internally for talent. So a lot of this is again, going back to this sort of systems thinking view of, what could we do, or what would we need to change structurally, organizationally, financially, if we wanted to sort of unleash this talent wherever it in fact could be used. And so I feel like there are some organizations doing it, but they're usually like highlighted because they're so unique in the fact that they're doing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree. I mean, these are far from new ideas. The talent marketplaces, I think, has been a very interesting phase. And so I haven't really been privy to the front lines of how they've been implemented. I know that some people are pretty skeptical, but I mean, I think it's got to be an improvement to have talent marketplaces as opposed to not having talent marketplaces. I mean, there was a nice, actually, example of Publicis who set up a global network across their agencies during COVID. And actually, they were able to draw on talent and save a lot of layoffs and so on. Yeah, there are some nice standout examples of it. But I think, now the thing is, yes, these are far from new ideas, but AI does both accelerate it because it is disrupting work pretty significantly, and it can, of course, can be an enabler of being able to understand how it is we can best.
Welcome to This Meeting Should Have Been a Podcast, where we take on workplace issues from a skewed angle.
No corporate buzzwords, you quiet quitters.
And no strategic KPIs or dashboards.
Get out of here. We're talking company culture, leadership, workplace.
Guests who've lived through the chaos.
So forget those slide decks. We're candid, clever, hopefully useful.
We'll see you outside the boardroom. Go Lakers.
Don't wear that. Get out. Don't even wear that hat.
Deploy talent and capability, but it requires that intent because so many are saying, all right, how do we cut this? How do we cut headcount? And if with that intent, you're unlikely to be uncovering the potential value to contribute of your people.
Yeah, no, I certainly don't want to imply that these are easy challenges to solve, right? They would have been solved by now. And so, but I guess, as I think about people moving up this sort of AI maturity and readiness scale, I do think about that through a human-centric lens as well, right? Like, yes, of course, you need quality data, you need trusted data to feed these algorithms. So there's a data and analytics maturity, there's an infrastructure, maturity that the organization needs to think about. I guess I think about it, even though I've never actually been in HR, so I'm sort of, Monday morning quarterbacking a little bit, as they say. But I've spent the last, 5 years or so in this space, in this HR tech, talent tech space, and so I think about the CHRO or the chief people officer, and the role that they need to play in this AI, powered transformation, and as long as they are at least partnering with the CIO, chief data officer, et cetera, then we can maintain that sort of human centricity and say, look, none of that, you can build whatever fancy IT strategy and AI strategy you want. If your people aren't ready, who is executing this strategy, right? So you've got to have people aware of what's possible, protect the organization on the responsibility and ethical side, but also once people know what AI is capable of, let them come up with ideas of how to use it in their day-to-day work, but also understand why the organization is making certain strategic moves that may require you to, your role to change, your role to potentially be illuminated, but that's okay because we have another spot for you where we think you're going to add a lot of value. I mean, there's a lot you can do with the talent that you have and you don't yet realize it. And so I think about that in the sense of this is how organizations need to move forward. Everyone needs to be, swimming in the same, or rowing in the same direction. Otherwise, you're just going to keep looking for skills, outside the organization. It's going to cost you a lot more time and a lot more money to do that. And so I don't know. I'm just hoping that organizations think about the higher value tasks that people could be doing. It's fine if you want to automate things and take some of those tasks off people's plates, but they're capable of doing other things in a lot of cases. And so you need to sort of assess that capability, make that type of transition, and make sure that they're continually learning. If they don't have the capacity to do that, that's another story, but give them that opportunity. And what else can the organization do once everyone is ready to drive and build the future of work that they want?
Yeah, well, I think there's a frame where it's similar just from a CFO perspective, just being able to make sure that you are assessing the cost of onboarding new people if you might need those again, as a lot of people have retrenched and then rehired, and so the slightly harder to calculate but other intangible impacts on morale, ability to hire talent in the future, et cetera, et cetera. But this comes back to my work in helping organizations build AI roadmaps. And it's the way, I always say, this is a journey. And the journey is becoming an AI, well, humans plus AI organization, or whatever you want to call it, AI-enabled, AI first, whatever the language is, whatever it is, part of it is creating this vision. What it is we are moving towards as an organization. And this requires thinking about what is the future of work, what is the role of AI in our organizations versus the role of humans. So any organization has got humans. If it's only one human, well, let's ignore the rest of that debate. Yeah, so every organization's got humans and every organization's got AI. So there is a journey from wherever you are now to wherever you are going. And as you mentioned, there are aspects in terms of the technology layers behind it. There's access, and obviously, to whatever degree the shifting the process, redesigning processes and workflows. These obviously change as you bring AI into what happenings. And it also changes the capabilities. There are different capability sets you need. And some capabilities you've had in the past, you may not need in the future. There are certainly other new capabilities you need. And, plenty of organizations are doing these kind of gap analysis. What are the skills we'll need in the future? What are the skills we got now? Or how are we going to transition by hiring and developing and so on, or laying off to AI, whatever it may be. So this all becomes part, what ultimately must be framed around a vision of what it is you want your organization to become. And that is a journey from wherever you are now to wherever that is, in being able to take your humans in the organizations to be well integrated with the AI capabilities to create that. So, yeah, in some cases that will mean that there are organizations that have quite a fewer people than they do today. Others may have more people because they're able to massively expand the capabilities and the productivity and the ability to create value in the market. But it's, there is, this all have to be framed, not on, sure. And in general, all other things being equal, don't fire people. But, you've got to run a business. And I think that framing of where are you going as an organization? What is your roadmap? What is your vision? How are you creating what you believe will be a prosperous, vital humans plus AI organization? And then, all right, well, what's the path? What do we do now?
I think I appreciate more when people think more deeply about what you just described in terms of where do we need to be, right? Think of that North Star, or however you want to describe it, or I think the Amazon methodology is work backwards, right? So where do you want? What is it that you want to achieve, and then work backwards from there, as opposed to just starting with, well, we got to get rid of 500 people. Like what do you mean? I think what you mean is you need to get rid of you need to save the cost of 500 people. So let's think creatively about how we can accomplish that, right? And as opposed to just saying, here's starting with that sort of flawed premise, and then everyone's just going to run around, laser focused on, well, who do we cut? Instead of saying, well, where can we save this cost? Where can we apply, different forms of AI, or even let's just start with some efficiency. Let's start looking at our processes and our workflows and saying, where can we streamline and get rid of some tasks altogether, or use automation for those, and then start nibbling at it that way, and then doing a skills assessment and a sort of agility assessment. Are these people capable of being reskilled? Do they have transferable skills where we could be moving them to a higher growth area with bigger margins or whatever it is? And then if we still need to let people go, so be it, but starting with that kind of sort of negative, non-human-centric lens, just for the sake of it, just because it's convenient, I think is just not what is going to help organizations move forward ultimately. This is a myopic view of what it takes to sort of fix the organization.
Yeah, well, the reality is, some leaders will take that approach and others will not. And I mean, my general belief is that those organizations that prove themselves to be more human-centric than others will be more likely to attract and retain talent, and will be, as a result, more likely to prosper in the future. We'll see.
Absolutely. Ross, as we're sort of wrapping up here, I was curious, you're obviously pretty deep into all this technology. I was just curious if there's anything beyond your daily work, if there's some tools or use cases or things that you see out there that are particularly intriguing or concerning.
So the heart of my work is augmenting thinking. And so that's the way in which I use these tools. I usually personally use the models directly. And so I do use, actually just the major four models. I haven't been playing so much with the open source models at this point. And simply just being able to say, well, how is it that we can interact in ways that are going to augment my thinking and my capabilities? And of course, applying those lessons into my ThoughtWeaver software. It's building in those kinds of methodologies and approaches. So one of my big shifts now is I am getting more into the application of AI to software development. So I'm not a coder, though I've been involved in software development in various ways for quite a long time. But I'm building out a sort of a AI accelerated methodologies, and it's a very interesting finding so far. One is, so Figma Make is one of a wonderful set of front-end tools for developing front-end prototypes, and a few other interesting prototype tools. I haven't really played with it yet, but Miro, just a few weeks ago, Miro did a sort of a very big product launch to incorporate AI into a lot broader array of what they are doing to create this kind of this end-to-end AI-enabled canvas, which I think is really intriguing. And so now I am getting more directly into the AI-enabled coding. So using, setting up my GitHub repos and building some, software using the tools, because I think it's, when I look at, my mission through my life has been to amplify, my ideas, my thinking, my capabilities. And AI has obviously been enormously valuable. And I'm just coming more to the conclusion that a lot of that is in software. And so I still have software people working for me, and I'm not going to be spending all my time in the screen things, but I'm finding that it's more and more useful to do that. And I'm less enthusiastic about your kind of build, the classic vibe coding apps like Lovable or Bolts or so on, or Replit, because I think there's still a long way from creating really robust software, and you don't see so much what's going on inside the hood. And so these, they're very, 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 very useful to many people in many cases. All right, I'm just trying to create something, and you can very quickly and readily do that. So I'm not saying they're not wonderful tools, but I'm just a bit less personally interested in them because I want to be able to be working more with the architectures of what underlies that. And so started designing these architectures, and then I'm really interested in this idea of how do you have a repository of the source of truth of what it is you're trying to build, and your projects and using a set of files in GitHub at the moment. This could be, for example, again, a project in OpenAI and ChatGPT or Claude, for example, if they're designed well or can be, useful ways to be able to construct that. So ways in which you are building an environment for thinking or building tools is where my where I'm delving more into at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I've been dabbling in some of those as well. But you're right. I mean, it was pretty straightforward with me. Like, I think you're going to need, if you want to build something custom, here's what you're going to do. And it goes off and says you're going to need this, 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 this. And so, yeah, so there are definitely some limitations to some of those tools like Lovable and Base 44, et cetera. Ross, thank you so much for spending so much time with me. I just really always fascinated by your insights, and I appreciate all the work that you've done over the years and all the just really deep thinking that you get me to do every day. And so I'm grateful for that. And so thank you for being here.
It was a real pleasure. And thanks for your work too, Bob.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right. Well, thank you, Ross. And thank you everyone for listening. We will catch you next time.